Tonight on Steelers Talk, we're going to be talking about my film takeaways from Steelers versus Patriots in Week 3. Had the opportunity to sit down, watch the film, break it down in this football game, and breaking down some of the good, but definitely a lot of the bad that needs to be improved for the Pittsburgh Steelers moving forward here to the Dublin game versus the Minnesota Vikings this Sunday. Make sure you guys stay tuned for why the Pittsburgh Steelers aren't throwing the ball deep with Aaron Rodgers all that often, and why this is really a dink and dunk Steelers passing offense at this point. You want the answer to that? Make sure you guys stay tuned. It'll be coming up here in just a few minutes. But make sure you click that subscribe button if you haven't already. If you guys want in-depth Steelers analysis based on the film every single day for free on this channel, we grind the film here on Steelers Talk so that you guys don't have to, and you guys can get access to the same information without spending the hours that I just did going over this film. So make sure you guys click that subscribe button if you haven't already for in-depth Steelers film analysis and takeaways every single week. So first, let's start with the offense, all right? Because certainly the offense petered out in the middle portion of the game yesterday. You know, you have a great first 2 drives, you get 2 touchdowns, and of course you have a great final drive to get a touchdown to Calvin Austin III. But in the middle section there, this offense couldn't get anything going. So what the heck happened? So let's start with the offensive coordinator, Arthur Smith. And the thing you have to understand about Art, guys, is that he runs what he runs, all right? He's not Ben Johnson or Kyle Shanahan or Sean McVay or any of these gurus that have a bunch of passing concepts and creative stuff in their playbook. Arthur Smith's philosophy is a lot more simple, and his philosophy is we are going to have a smaller type of playbook, then we're going to run the stuff that we run, and the thinking is we're going to practice the same plays over and over and over again so that we are really good at these select few plays. And then, we're going to disguise it with formations, all right? So, like, you're going to have a bunch of different plays and a bunch of different possibilities from certain condensed formations that Arthur Smith likes to run. And the hope is you are playing at a very high level of execution with the defense not knowing what's coming at them next. So, that's kind of Arthur Smith's philosophy. And by the way, guys, this strategy can work. He proved that in Tennessee with Mike Vrabel. In his stint as the offensive coordinator there with Derrick Henry at running back. That certainly makes things a lot easier. With Ryan Tannehill as his quarterback, being somebody that could execute the offense at a high level with play action and all that stuff. In the early 2020s, I mean, that Tennessee Titans team had a number 1 seed season with teams like the Kansas City Chiefs in the conference, with the Buffalo Bills, with the Baltimore Ravens, and with Ryan Tannehill at quarterback. They were able to have one of the most efficient offenses in the league. Of course, that was a run-centric offense with Derrick Henry, but you guys get my point there. The main issue right now with Arthur Smith's Steelers offense is the foundation of this offense is rotten. And, of course, the foundation of the offense is the offensive line, all right, in this run game, because we saw it in Tennessee. If you can get that run game going, if you can put the fear of God in the opposing defense and make them go all out to stop the run, it opens up the entirety of the playbook with play action and everything else. And the Steelers just don't have that right now. And a big, big problem that the Steelers have is that they can't get teams out of 2 high safety structures. Okay, and Aaron Rodgers has actually pointed this out in his post-game press conferences where, they're just not having success running the football on early downs when teams are still playing 2 high safety structures. And, you want to know why Aaron Rodgers isn't throwing the ball deep? You want to know why he's 32nd in the league right now in average depth of target? Well, it's because they can't run the ball even when they have the numbers. And, it's weird because this is one of the heavier offenses in the league. This past week against the Patriots, 2/3 of their offensive plays were with heavy personnel, yet they still can't run the football even when they have the numbers in the box. If teams have 2 high safeties, guys, that means the Steelers have the advantage in the run game. And they still can't move the football effectively, even in those instances. So why the hell would opposing defenses respect the Steelers' run game if they can't run the football, even when they're sitting in these 2 high structures? And what this means, guys, is defenses can just sit in 2 high all day long and take away the deep ball. Rodgers doesn't have any options deep, and it also doesn't help that the offensive line doesn't hold up long enough, and Rodgers doesn't have time to sit in the pocket and let these longer developing routes develop. So, that combination is really a killer, and it really forces this Pittsburgh Steelers team. It really does force them to have to dink and dunk, and Rodgers to try just take what the defense gives them. And I think Rodgers has actually done a pretty decent job of that so far this season. He's had a couple of pretty big mistakes, getting too aggressive throwing the ball down the field. We've seen that over the last 2 weeks. But I think overall, Rodgers is certainly not the problem. It's the fact that they can't run the football on early downs. Then we get to a positive here, actually, which is that the Steelers' screen game did get going a little bit. Honestly, it was maybe the best thing about this Steelers offense in this game, dumping it off to Jaylen Warren with some blockers in front of him and letting him do his thing in open space. Also, DK Metcalf had a couple of successful screens as well. And listen, if you can't get the run game going, I think Pittsburgh is starting to learn that they might have to lean on the screen game a little bit more. This is why you bring in Jonnu Smith, right, to give him those manufactured touches. He's pretty darn good at that. He did have an almost costly fumble in this football game, by the way. Very lucky the Steelers. The ball went out of bounds there on that fumble from Jonnu Smith. But DK Metcalf has been very effective in the screen game. So has Jaylen Warren. Jonnu Smith has been maybe a little bit underwhelming in the screen game, but you can certainly find creative ways to get him the football as well. So I think that the Steelers certainly need to lean on that screen game a little bit more. They found some success with that in this Patriots game, and I'm hoping to see that continue in weeks to come. Then I also hate to say it, man, but your 2 first-round picks at offensive tackle have been the weak links on this Steelers offensive line. You want to know why Rodgers is under pressure as much as he is? It's because the offensive tackles are allowing inside pressure a lot, all right? And we already knew that Broderick Jones hasn't been playing well, all right? Every Steelers fan on the planet knows that is happening. But I think a lot of people don't really realize how bad Troy Fautanu has been through the first 3 weeks. He has allowed almost just as much interior pressure and quick wins in both phases on offense as Broderick Jones has. And, Fautanu was not supposed to be that way. Like, we knew Broderick coming into the league was a little bit raw and needed some coaching up, but Fautanu was supposed to be like a finished product coming out. He had awesome film, and he still has the physical capabilities. I still think, that Fautanu can turn it around. I'm by no means saying both of these guys are busts at this point and that they can't get better as the season goes on. In fact, I expect these guys to get better as the season goes on, and if that happens, that will be huge for this team. But in both phases, run and pass, the 2 offensive tackles that this team invested first-round draft capital in are not good enough. Then we get to DK Metcalf, and unfortunately, he's just not getting open, folks. And this sucks because you give him $33 million per season. Now, I won't say it's all on DK. I think that the team, unfortunately, is not necessarily using him in the right ways. I was hoping that he was going to be able to be in that A.J. Brown role in this Arthur Smith offense. And A.J. Brown was absolutely fantastic in this offense when he was in Tennessee with Arthur Smith. But it just seems like the Steelers are leaving so much meat on the bone. With teams playing 2 high safety structures a ton, they're taking away the deep ball very consistently. And right now the Steelers are mostly using Metcalf on like streaks and on fades like they used George Pickens. But for me, Metcalf is more of a yards after the catch threat than a 50-50 ball winner. I know Metcalf is big, so a lot of people think that he's like this crazy 50-50 ball winner. But honestly, his contested catch rate is not that great. I think his greatest strength is getting the ball in his hands with a head of steam. And you better believe there's not a defensive back on the planet that wants to tackle DK Metcalf running full speed at them with a head of steam, after the catch. And I was hoping that they were going to use him on slants, on drift concepts off of play action, on deep digs, and we just haven't seen that from Metcalf at this point. And I'm hoping that they can use him more in those ways in the weeks to come, because A.J. Brown really did ball out in this offense in that role. And kind of similar, both these guys, obviously college teammates, very similar builds. Both are great after the catch. Now, A.J. is a little bit more of a diverse route runner than DK Metcalf is, and he can change directions smoother than Metcalf can. But when I saw that they got DK Metcalf, I'm like, oh my goodness, Arthur Smith just got his Arthur Smith, but instead they're just replacing George Pickens' role as the deep threat, and I just don't think that is making the most of Metcalf's skill set. And I just think that Arthur Smith needs to take a hint here, man. I think that his best stuff this season has come in yards after the catch opportunities. We saw it in the Jets game, multiple yak opportunities in that game, and once he hits that stride, guys, and once he hits that gear and takes it to that next gear, I mean, it's scary to watch. I mean, he just jumps out of your television screen, and instead the Steelers are just using him as like as a designated deep threat. And it's like, I feel like you can get so much more out of this wide receiver who is so big and physically imposing and so great after the catch, but they're just not using him in that way. And I think they got to use him in that way more. And then when it comes to Roman Wilson, guys, he's a backup at this point, plain and simply. Like, people want to talk about 3 receivers, and most people talk about a wide receiver trio in the National Football League, and for good reason. Most teams, have 3 wide receivers that get starting level snaps. The Steelers are not one of those football teams, okay? Roman Wilson is essentially the number 5 receiving weapon in terms of the total snaps on the Steelers offense right now. We talked about it earlier, but the Steelers had multiple tight ends. That's 2 and 3 tight end sets and 2/3 of their offensive snaps versus the Patriots. So essentially, what that means is that their 4 core pass catchers on this offense are DK Metcalf, Calvin Austin III are the only 2 true receivers, and then you got Jonnu Smith and Pat Freiermuth as kind of versatile tight end slot wide receiver hybrids. All right, and you are seeing this team use both Jonnu and Muth as hybrid players in line, in the slot, even out wide. And, unfortunately, Jonnu and Muth just haven't gotten open enough in these first few weeks, and teams are really using a lot of man coverage on the Steelers, and none of these guys are getting consistent enough separation, maybe outside of Calvin. But unfortunately, Calvin, he's had a couple decent games, but he certainly hasn't gotten the ball enough to get these teams out of these man coverage looks that the Steelers are seeing. But at the end of the day, guys, I think it all makes sense. All summer, we heard that the Steelers were perfectly fine and they felt good about their wide receiver room. And that makes a lot more sense when you look at it from the fact that they never really planned on having a wide receiver starting trio. They wanted to have a starting duo and then have a duo of receiving type of tight ends to hopefully give them some versatility in the passing game as well. But unfortunately, especially with the run game not being what it is, that just hasn't come to fruition at this point, and Roman Wilson has essentially been delegated to backup duties. And I think that there's 2 major issues here with having those 4 guys as your main starting pass catchers. Number 1, no one is getting open enough versus man coverage, so teams can just sit in man, and Rodgers won't have many options. And then also number 2, it's not creating the advantage in the run game that they thought playing heavy would have. I mean, the Steelers are playing more 12 and 13 personnel than literally any team in the National Football League right now, all right? More than any team, just like we predicted before the season. And the reason for that is they wanted to have the size advantage in the run game while also having the ability to play action. But guess what? The run game's not working, even with the heavy personnel. So it's going to be interesting to see if they keep banging their head against the wall here and keep going with this heavy personnel type of game plan, because it certainly hasn't helped out the run game at this point, and that was really the main reason why they went to this strategy in the first place. Then we get to Jaylen Warren, and frankly, guys, Jaylen Warren is carrying this group and carrying the run game. He's only averaging 3.1 yards per carry right now, but that's a miracle given the way that this offensive line has blocked for him. The number of times that this guy has made a guy miss in the backfield to get just a 2 or 3 yard gain is absolutely incredible. He makes a guy miss on almost every single play. And, he's also a dynamic threat in the passing game. Honestly, he might be the most productive Steelers receiver at this point through the first 3 games. So all I can say, guys, is that if the Steelers don't make any switches here, pray Jaylen Warren does not get injured this year. The second Jaylen Warren gets injured, or if he has a season-ending injury, I really don't know what this offense is going to do. I really don't. So you better hope that Jaylen Warren, with an increased workload now, which means a higher injury risk, can stay healthy for the entirety of a 17-game schedule, because, he's getting a lot of the touches, which means increased injury risk, but he's certainly carrying this group right now. But overall, guys, I thought Aaron Rodgers was mostly fine yesterday. I do not think he is the problem with this Steelers team. I think when you look at Rodgers, he's honestly been getting the football where it's supposed to go most of the time, given the circumstances. And, it kind of reminds me of last year, man. Like, the Pittsburgh Steelers did not support Russell Wilson and Justin Fields with the run game that they thought that they were going to have with Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren. And they didn't give them, obviously they didn't get the production from the receivers that they thought they were going to get. All right, and because of that, Russell Wilson, a limited quarterback, wasn't able to elevate the group, and the team ended up collapsing. And this year, the same thing seems to be happening with Aaron Rodgers. Guys not getting open. Run game isn't getting it done. especially with multiple tight ends on the field, which is just an embarrassment at this point. And, I think Aaron Rodgers, if you can put together a good game plan, get him open receivers. We saw it in the Jets game. When guys were running wide open, what'd he do? He threw 4 touchdown passes. This is not an Aaron Rodgers problem, guys. He's throwing accurately. He still has the arm talent, all that great stuff. He's super intelligent. You can see the wheels turning with the mental processing on tape. It's the other stuff around him that needs to get better, and if it does, I think Aaron Rodgers is going to put up some big numbers this year. So let us know down there in the comment section, what is the biggest problem with the Steelers right now? We're going to get into the defensive takeaways here in just a second. That was just the offensive takeaways here, guys. This will be the pinned comment on today's show. We're going to give you a word from our sponsor here at Omaha Steaks here in just one moment. But make sure you guys go down there while I'm talking about our sponsor today and let me know what the biggest problem is with the Pittsburgh Steelers right now. With that, let's have a word from our sponsor here at Omaha Steaks. And from handcrafted steaks to delicious fall favorites, Omaha Steaks delivers the world's best steak experience. Enjoy USDA-certified tender steaks, juicy burgers, cozy and convenient comfort meals, plus tailgating favorites like chicken wings, smash burgers, and big deli-style franks. And now, during their Red Hot Sale event, you can get 50% off site-wide at omahasteaks.com. Plus, our listeners get an extra $35 off with promo code Steelers at checkout. So not only do you get 50% off their website, but you also get an additional $35 off your order when you use code Steelers at omahasteaks.com. And personally, guys, I love Omaha Steaks. I cook steak with Cassie at home at least 2 to 3 times a week. We love cooking up steaks, especially when you get them at this low of a price and you get this great of a deal. Get fired up for fall grilling with Omaha Steaks today. Visit omahasteaks.com for 50% off site-wide during their Red Hot Sale event. And for an extra $35 off, use promo code Steelers at checkout. That's 50% off at omahasteaks.com and an additional $35 off with promo code Steelers at checkout. So again, guys, that's 50% off your order plus an additional $35 off when you use promo code Steelers. See site for details. A big thank you to Omaha Steaks for sponsoring today's edition of Steelers Talk. All right, so now let's go on to the defense here, and there's quite a bit to talk about with the defense as well. So if you thought the offense was extensive, here we go, fans. So let's go first up here. Same old game plan for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And, this is a very classic Tomlin defense. And, Tomlin has more or less run his defenses very similarly all throughout his 18-year tenure here in Pittsburgh. But to kind of put it down to the gist, what Tomlin's defensive philosophy is to play cover 1 and cover 3 pretty straight up with not a lot of post-snap rotations or anything like that. Play straight up cover 1 or cover 3 on early downs, and you hope that your pass rush gets a sack. You hope for a penalty. You hope for a negative play of some sort to put the team that you're playing behind the sticks. And then once they're behind the sticks, then you can start throwing some of the post-snap rotations, the non-traditional Tampas, the blitzes, the fire zones that Dick LeBeau made famous here, and all the disguises. And, the Steelers do run that stuff. It's just on early downs, they play pretty vanilla cover 1 and cover 3. I think teams have certainly figured out that they can pass the football pretty effectively against the Steelers as long as they stay ahead of the sticks. So here's something that's kind of crazy, man. The Steelers' last 6 pass defense snaps were quote-unquote non-static defensive coverages. What that means is that there is either a pre-snap disguise or there was a post-snap rotation of some kind. Before that, they only had, I believe, 5 the entire game before that on 30 snaps. So, they were playing pretty vanilla, and then of the ones that happened before this final drive, most of them were on third down. So they play pretty vanilla and static on first and second down as long as the team that they're playing is staying on schedule, and the Patriots did stay on schedule pretty frequently yesterday. And then they play, kind of non-static coverages on third down in crunch time situations, which might explain why the Steelers defense is pretty good at stopping teams on the final drive of games because they're throwing stuff at an offense that they haven't seen the entire game. So I guess give kudos to the Steelers for getting the job done, having a bend-don't-break style of defense here, but you certainly gave up a lot of yards in the process. Some more takeaways here in terms of alignment and play time. Chuck Clark stayed in the starting lineup. He had the most snaps among safeties yesterday over Jabrill Peppers, and then Juan Thornhill went from 100% participation last week versus Seattle to this week getting under 40% of defensive snaps. He still played in a rotational role but he certainly got demoted this week. So keep that in mind. And then another thing to do here if you're the Steelers is to play Jabrill Peppers more. Had a 90.1 PFF grade this week, and on film he was flying around, dude. He had that forced fumble. He was great in run support. When he was asked to play deep safety, I thought he did that better than either Juan Thornhill or Chuck Clark has throughout the start of this season. So I'm really excited to see what Jabrill Peppers and Deshaun Elliott are going to be able to do as a safety tandem this year. Speaking of Deshaun Elliott, you got to get Joey Porter Jr. and Deshaun Elliott back in the lineup. And I think once you do, that's going to open up a lot of good things for this Steelers secondary, because right now the Steelers are playing a lot of off coverage and they don't really have any corners on their team that they trust in press coverage. And that's really Joey Porter Jr.'s role. And losing Joey, I can't explain how important that is to this defense, because he's your meg defender. And what that means is man everywhere he goes. He is the guy that you put on an island. He is a guy that you trust with the number one assignments in press coverage with those long arms. And when he's not on the field, that is a big loss for this defense, and we have felt that loss. And then when it comes to Deshaun Elliott, he's one of the best run defense safeties in the league, super instinctive, really good as a buzzing safety as well in zone coverages, and you have really missed his presence these first few weeks, having to look at Chuck Clark and Juan Thornhill play safety for this team. There's been moments where Clark and Thornhill have looked all right, but that's certainly been a weakness of this Steelers defense to this point. And once you can put Peppers, Joey Porter Jr., and Deshaun Elliott all on the field at the same time, along with Jalen, Ramsey, and Darius Slay, and hopefully those guys can stay healthy, I think that this group looks a lot better than what it has in the first 3 weeks. Now, before we get into the rest of our defensive takeaways here, guys, if you enjoy the in-depth coverage here, if you love the level of nuance and depth that we're going in on this video, and you appreciate the efforts that we put on this video, make sure you guys click that thumbs up icon. It really does help out the show. It puts this video in front of more Steelers fans like yourselves. It helps us grow our subscriber base, because the more people that watch, the more people that subscribe, the more people that like, and it's just a cycle, guys. So thank you guys so much for your support. And now let's get into the rest of our defensive takeaways here, starting with Cole Holcomb. And starting him over Peyton Wilson, he had a majority of the snaps in this game over Peyton Wilson, was the right choice. He was much better in run defense. You can tell that he is a lot more disciplined in his run fit. He's a lot more physical than Peyton Wilson has been, frankly, in run defense. And when Wilson was out there, he still had lapses in coverage. He had a blown coverage that gave up the second touchdown in Tampa 2 versus the New England Patriots yesterday, in a disguised look. So, Peyton Wilson has had a tough start. That's a big swing and a miss by me. I heard everything coming out of camp and Luke Kuechly and all these different people praising him, and I thought he was going to be the next great Steelers linebacker. Right now, he's got a long way to go still to get to that point, and Cole Holcomb should be this team's number 2 starting inside linebacker, at least until Juwan Bentley can get going. Then we get to Patrick Queen, who is coming alive, specifically in the run game, guys. Now, there's still some lapses in pass coverage, but here's the thing with linebackers, guys. In zone coverage, linebackers are not always going to win, all right? There's not a lot of really good zone coverage linebackers in the National Football League. And, does Queenie give up his fair share of catches? Sure. But, he's also super athletic. He's great with his instincts. He has had 9 run stuffs. So that's either tackles of runs that result in 0 or negative yardage over the last 2 weeks. He has been a big-time impact in the run game. He's a big reason why the run game was as good as it was in the run defense department for this defense last week. And I think Holcomb was also a good part of that as well. So, we went from week 1, where both Patrick Queen and Peyton Wilson were doo-doo garbage baby against the run, to, week 3, where Queen and Holcomb seems to be like the duo there that's getting it done. So hopefully they can keep that rolling. Hopefully that duo can continue to stop the run as the weeks go on. I still think that the Steelers need to make a switch at nose tackle. Here's the thing about Keanu Benton, guys. He can actually make some very disruptive plays as a run defender, but they're few and far between, because he's going to have to get the leverage advantage against the offensive lineman, and he's going to have to not get double teamed, which is pretty rare when you're a nose tackle. You get double teamed a lot when you play nose tackle in the National Football League, and he's still getting driven backwards. It wasn't as bad as it was in the first 2 weeks. I thought he played better this week, and this was his best game so far. But I feel like the switch is just so easy. You put Y.A. Black, who is a 330-pound monster with long arms, in the middle there to kind of plug up that middle of the offensive line, and then you allow Keanu Benton to play the other defensive end spot where he can be more disruptive and take on more one-on-one assignments and get into the backfield and get more TFLs. I think if you make that switch, like, this run defense gets even better than what we saw yesterday. Another thing that I want the Steelers to do, and I pointed this out last week, and I'm going to continue to point this out: blitz Jalen Ramsey more. All right? Back in the day when Mike Hilton was here, the Steelers blitzed him a ton, and it's so much that offenses were literally afraid of Mike Hilton, and they would literally have to account for where Mike Hilton was on any given play every single snap, and that they were able to work things off of that, and they were able to beautifully marry concepts off of the threat of the nickel blitz. Well, guess what? The Steelers only blitzed Ramsey once yesterday, and it was the final play of the game. And what happened? It was a 4th-and-1 stop. It worked out great. So right now, I don't think teams fear Jalen Ramsey in the way that they should. Now, maybe they feel like, oh, with Joey Porter Jr. out, we don't trust to have less defenders in the secondary. We want to play more bend, don't break. We don't want to give up as many big plays. And we want Jalen out in coverage where he can get interceptions and pass breakups and all this different stuff. And I understand that. But also, man, like, if you have the threat of Jalen Ramsey on every play coming after your quarterback, like, that's going to be another element that quarterbacks and offensive coordinators have to deal with. And that's just going to make this defense more dangerous. So there's no reason, in my opinion. Ramsey's one of the best blitzing corners in the entire National Football League, if not the best. I would put him close to the line of scrimmage on almost every single play and make teams worry about him so they can open up other things in this defense. And then the final defensive takeaway, guys, is that T.J. Watt and Nick Herbig are fierce. All right, these guys are unbelievable. And, you know, TJ got 2 sacks. Herbig had a forced fumble. Both of these guys were affecting the quarterback very frequently. And I'm really excited about this duo moving forward with Alex Highsmith out for probably the next month or so. And right now, guys, I think Nick Herbig is making himself indispensable moving forward. All right, like, would anybody be shocked right now if they gave Nick Herbig a big extension next offseason and then traded Alex Highsmith for a high draft pick next year? I wouldn't, especially with the rate that Highsmith gets injured at. And listen, man, I love Highsmith. I think he's a great fit for this defense. He's good out in coverage, so that gives this defense versatility when he's on the field. He's just been injured too frequently, and he's very expensive as well. And Herbig's younger and all these different things. So, like, you know, it's going to be interesting to see how well Herbig plays over these next several weeks. He's been awesome in the 2 weeks he's been back. And I'm looking forward to seeing what this young man can do as a starting outside linebacker for the Pittsburgh Steelers over the next month. So what say you guys? Let me know down there in the comment section. Should Nick Herbig be a full-time starter in this defense over Alex Highsmith, even when he gets back? Give me a yes or a no down there in the comment section. That'll be it for today's show, guys. I know today was an absolute beast of a video, but we try to give you guys the most in-depth, extensive Steelers coverage anywhere on YouTube. So make sure you guys click that subscribe button if you enjoyed today's content. You want more in-depth Steelers videos just like this one every single day.